economic development between the two countries. South Africa's exports to Russia were estimated at some 2.4 billion rands between January and July of 2016, which was composed of vegetables at 1.1 billion rands, products such as iron and steel at 502 million rands, and mineral products at 369 million rands. Now, these figures are expected to increase in the second half of the year and change the negative trade balance that South Africa has been experiencing with its partners in the north. On Friday, South Africa's Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Maite Nkoana Mashabane, and the Russian Minister for National Resources and the Environment, Sergey Dons-koy, co-chaired the 14th session of the Joint Inter-governmental Committee on Trade and Economic Cooperation between South Africa and the Russian Federation. And now to discuss the outcome of the meeting, we are now joined by Acting Deputy Director General Michael Currin from the Government Communication and Information System. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Can you first just explain to us what exactly is ITEC and what is it all about?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, viewers. Well, it's a very exciting platform where we manage our bilateral relations with Russia. It meets annually, and in the ITEC, it's an opportunity to review our partnership in a range of areas. Issues to do with, as you were mentioning, trade and industry, issues of water, minerals. And this year we were quite excited because we introduced a communication work stream as well. So ITEC is a formal bilateral structure that helps us monitor on an annual basis how the different agreements we've reached with Russia between our two nations have been implemented in the past year. And it was very interesting to note that we've had 38 agreements signed in the near 25 years of formal relations between us and Russia. And as you were mentioning, with a very, very huge amount of foreign exchange involved. So that's what ITEC was about, and delegations from the business community from both Russia and South Africa were also using the ITEC opportunity to look at how they can increase trade and investment.
Now, let's look at this bilateral session between Russia and South Africa. Now, we know that both countries are members of BRICS. Now, was this session strictly bilateral, or was it within the realm of that relationship with BRICS nations?
Well, yes, definitely. Remember, we work in different forms, and BRICS would be what we call a multilateral engagement. So in the BRICS platform, we would have wider interests that affect our partner countries, such as China and Brazil and India as well. So in the bilateral, the ITEC, we really are looking at areas of collaboration around ourselves and Russia, and dealing with some of the specifics that our two countries would need to work on. I mean, obviously, there are opportunities like in the broader science field and the like, where things that BRICS countries are finding common and are finding useful also get detailed attention at a binational level. So they would advance some of the issues of the BRICS agenda, but with specific focus on Russia and South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Now, the last session was held in Moscow in 2015, before this current one in Pretoria. Now, what progress has been made since the last one that was held in Moscow?
Well, I think some of the most notable areas of progress, I mean, obviously every partnership has work, and there's things that we picked up that need more attention. But the enormous progress, I think we are looking in a few fields. As you mentioned, the trade and investment is a huge area, and both South Africa and Russia, unfortunately, were reflecting on the fact that due to the global downturn, there is a bit of a slower growth in exchange, but that's definitely an area of growth. Our Minister of Agriculture was there in Russia this week, where they were looking at agriculture and farming related issues. So one of the major progress areas we've seen since last year is how our produce and farming support around technology and farming has been exchanged. Obviously, you know, both Russia and South Africa have the hugest deposits of platinum in the world. So one of the major areas of how we have been collaborating since last year is in the beneficiation and development of platinum metals groups toward wider applications of those and towards the control of some of the illicit transactions in those minerals, which mean that countries like South Africa and Russia lose great revenue due to illicit transfer. So that was one major area. We're also looking at areas to do with water management, and some of the work we prepared since last year will culminate in a visit early next year, where we would look at how we can exchange with Russia lessons around waste management, water purification, and things like that. So I think it was very exciting, and I think one of the areas that I'm particularly happy, and I'm very glad, and I hope viewers of the program are aware of this, is that there's a lot to be done in terms of understanding the enormous benefits of opportunities in partnership with Russia. So I think one of the biggest outcomes since last year was the need that we have this communications working stream that I was involved in. So we as South Africans and Russian citizens get to know more about the opportunities that our two nations share. Mm-hmm. We share a rich political history, I think many viewers will be aware. And now I think the great progress since last year has been to cement that historical relationship into major areas of benefit to our economy, where we are struggling at the moment as both countries. And that hinges a lot on how we as South Africans start showing an interest in Russia. We start knowing more about them and what they are about and their interest in South Africa. We were very touched by the attitude of the Russian delegation that really sees South Africa as a nation, a friendly nation, a nation with whom they really want to work and collaborate. So I think that is a huge opportunity, and I encourage viewers, particularly young ones out there, to learn, because one of the areas that we also made some major progress in is how we can exchange learning and teaching between our two countries.
Now, Michael, from what you are saying, it appears there is really significant growth as well as diversification of the economic ties between the two countries. But it appears as well that there is a scope for even further growth in that relationship. Now, what are the two countries doing at least to ensure that that further growth is realized in the future?
Okay, well, I think one of the most important things I think viewers might be aware is without some sort of action plan, you don't go anywhere. So I think both the ministers were very clear to us as senior officials that in the business area, and those of us in government who work with business processes, we need to work with our business council to make sure that we really fast track some of the enormous areas of exchange between our countries. So pharmaceuticals, mineral beneficiation, as I mentioned earlier. We really need to work on an action plan that fast tracks that sort of exchange. I think for now the area of trade and investment and some of the challenges that we've encountered in that area need to be fast tracked. The other area, as I mentioned, is that we have major opportunities, and we would like to look for opportunities where we can get colleagues from the mineral sector to speak a bit more about the enormous work they've done there. I think in terms of the work that I picked up from the discussions, it's really our world market dominance in those platinum areas that would give us huge areas to build on in the next year.
Now, Michael, there were some observers, and many of them in the media, of course, who were expecting that the issue of South Africa's nuclear power program was to be discussed in this session in Pretoria. Was that on the table at all?
Yeah, well, I think obviously it's not my specific area of expertise, but it's certainly the Minister and the Minister of Dons-koy from Russia were very clear. We have a huge energy mix plan as government, and that plan makes allowance for all kinds of energy areas. Obviously that's nuclear, and South Africa and Russia have had a long-standing history around our nuclear power stations, around the provision of fuel and the things around that. And really, the ministers were very clear. This relationship continues. It's nothing extraordinary or controversial. It's about the enormous amount of high-quality services which Russian businesses have provided to Kuberg and other nuclear work we do, even in the medical field. So I think it was mentioned. It wasn't overinflated or made anything controversial about it, but it's really an area where we've enjoyed historical collaboration, and we will continue. I think viewers will probably be aware, and one of the areas that I was particularly noticed of interest was that the Russians also expressed how their interest in solar work, the wind power and solar energy. So Our technical relationship with Russia is so important because we know that they're world leaders in various industries, and I think that's what came to the fore in the discussions, more than some of the other specifics that have been raised in the media at large.
Mm-hmm. And
so basically we're getting down to a really detailed work and focusing on areas of collaboration.
And finally, Michael, we know that the session could also have touched on the issue of cultural exchanges between the two countries. Yes. Just how is that panning out?
Well, we had a lovely start to the week where we had a lovely cultural exchange and some arts and culture. That is something we really want to look at in the next 6 months. And the Minister of Dirko challenged government communications and arts and culture to really speed up things, because we do need to understand the historical relationship between our nations. I mean, hundreds of South Africans out there, some of them might be watching this program, have benefited from the enormous training and training and experiential learning exchanges with Russia. And there's such a common ground of mutual friendship between South Africa and Russia that we do believe that there's a lot more scope for people-to-people contact. Do we read enough and see enough on television? There's Russian TV out there, and I hope South Africans take a chance to view Russia today through that. So we do want to encourage more visual and written exchange between our people. Obviously, with young people learning in Russia and studying in Russia will be a wonderful opportunity to do that as well. Yep. But honestly, we think that in the next few months, we've got to do more so that South Africans can see images. Yes, they're very cold at the moment, and the Russian delegation were letting us know it's wonderful to be in our climate, in our country. So I think there's a lot of mutual benefit in terms of knowing each other's countries more that we'll be working on as a communication team in the next 6 months.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Michael. That was Michael Currin, the Acting Deputy Director General from the Government Communication and Information System, speaking to us about the 14th session of the Joint Inter-governmental Committee on Trade and Economic Cooperation between South Africa and the Russian Federation.